Crane to,
doing that.
Ah, good.
if we could ask Mr. Barry Crane to approach the podium, please.
Approach the bench. There you go. Hello. I am. Clear. I, Barry Crane, swear that I will diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability execute according to the law of the office of the Mayor of Turner Valley. Straightforward.
Sign the mortgage.
That's it.
And congratulations, Mayor Crane.
There you go. That's the only thing you get when you leave, is that tag, that's it.
I'll look forward to you.
All right, thank you.
Now,
All right, thank you and welcome residents of Turner Valley to the March 4th, 2019 regular business meeting. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:31 with the bang of the gavel. Okay, additions to or deletions from agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions? CAO, anything? We're good? Council? Good? Agenda approval, 4.1. Can I get an approval of agenda as presented? Mayor or Councillor Raab? All in favor? Unanimous? Adoption of previous minutes, 5.1, regular business meeting minutes of February 19th, 2019. Councillor Holladay gives his motion to accept. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous and passed, thank you. Question period. It's our tradition here in Turner Valley that the first 15 minutes of the business meeting, we have questions from the public. Mr. Sharp, have we received any questions today?
None this evening.
None this evening. Seeing none, we will continue on. Number 7, statutory hearings, no items. Moving on. Delegations. 8.1. Mr. Waring, I believe that says no items.
Correct.
Moving on. Number 9, reports. 9.1, Chief Administrative Officer's report. I hand it over to you, Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. For council's benefit, I wanted to update them on 3 small items tonight. The first one is snow clearance. The snow clearance around the community is progressing nicely. They substantially completed the work today. They'll finish up a few in the residential area. They'll finish up a few areas tomorrow, and we expect that will be completed by the end of the day tomorrow. The second item is the outdoor rink opening. Staff were working last week, as you know, some of you may know, to reestablish the outdoor rink and make ice. Of course, the weather has been more than conducive to that. Staff had the outdoor rinks substantially completed by Friday. Not a lot of usage this weekend for obvious reasons with respect to the weather. We're now using the Zamboni to put the finishing touches on that rink, and we'll continue to maintain that as long as we can this winter. The third item for council's information are the reservoir levels. The current raw water reservoir level is at 82%. We're going to continue to fill that to capacity. It's difficult to predict how quickly that will happen. With any luck, by the end of March we will have been able to achieve that. The intake project seems to be working successfully as planned, and we're excited to see the reservoir levels increasing. That's all I had for this evening, Mayor Crane.
Thank you. Any questions from council? I have one just in regards to the outdoor rink. Do we have advertised times for the public for children, family skates? Is there any rec leagues that have phoned or shown any interest?
As far as the league goes, or any sort of leagues goes, I'm not aware of that. We've published the times, I believe, when the information went out over the weekend. So we'll continue to maintain those hours of operation.
Perfect. Except for information.
Councillor Waring will accept for information. Any discussion? I'll ask again. Seeing none, all in favor? There we go, 9.1 is done. 9.2, Director of Emergency Management, presentation from Mr. Gerry Rooke. Mr. Todd Sharp, I hand it over to you again.
Through the mayor, we have Mr. Gerry Rooke on hand. He's our Director of Emergency Management, and he has prepared a report on the year that was in 2018 for council, including a number of the activities that have been undertaken and progress in a variety of areas. So I will turn it over to Mr. Rooke.
Do I need to use this mic?
Yep, go ahead.
Push and hold?
Yeah, just push one.
Hello, here to present a little bit of a report on some of the highlights of the 2018 year in the field of emergency and disaster management. So training is a big portion of emergency and disaster management. This year we offered an ICS 100 course. This was delivered to the Council of Turner Valley and Black Diamond employees, and as well fire department personnel. Quite often we do en masse training, as it were, and share the responsibility amongst communities to take advantage of some efficiencies and be a little bit more mindful of our resources. We also offered the Municipal Elected Officials course, which again was attended by members of Turner Valley and Black Diamond to get everybody trained up to speed. So by completing those courses, we filled in a lot of the blanks in terms of our emergency management plan and the basic level of training that we require of all employees and also of the local authority and council. Exercises, we did 3 this year. One was a well release. Last year we did quite a number of well abandonments within the town of Turner Valley. And so in preparation for that, in addition to writing the ERPs, etc., we did do a well release tabletop, which was attended by Crescent Point personnel, Turner Valley personnel, the Alberta Energy Regulator, and numerous other people, and sort of worked through just organizing the general plan of a sequence of events that would occur should an event happen, how we work together and communicate in order to coordinate the response to that. Arising from that incident, or from that exercise, we also did a sour gas release. This was more specific to the Turner Valley Fire Department, looking at what the initial response to a well release would look like, and how to deal with an escalating incident and pass that up to activate the EOC in Turner Valley. Also participated in a riverine flood tabletop exercise. So this one was hosted by the Alberta River Forecast Centre. They're an organization run by the provincial government up in Edmonton, and they're the ones responsible for sort of monitoring the conditions within the rivers throughout Alberta. They had come up with a new, essentially an online resource that they will use to communicate with various municipalities during a flood. And so we did an exercise around that, a mock flood scenario, so that we could practice using that tool to communicate with the center. Also in the realm of training, the Alberta Emergency Management Agency holds an annual summit up in Edmonton. This year we sent 2 delegates. A lot of the items on the agenda were dealing with the wildland-urban interface issues that we're experiencing in Alberta right now. So in order to get the most from this summit meeting, I attended, but we also had a delegate from the Turner Valley Fire Department come up as well, so that we could better cover some of the workshops and the courses. We looked at items such as climate change, the Alberta Shelter Module, which is a provincial program that's being developed. I had an opportunity to sort of dry run and provide some feedback on one of the beta versions. So for emergency social services, when we evacuate people, how do we track those people that evacuated? Where are they? How do we reunify them with their families, etc. Looked at a couple of case studies, large-scale grass fires, the CFB Suffield, which is also called the BYLAWS fire, sort of studied that one, how the response went, and some of the lessons learned from that. Designing better exercise scenarios, some dangerous good stuff. We had a doctor from Manitoba that specializes in wildland-urban interface do quite a presentation, quite a remarkable keynote speech, and gained a lot of information about wildland-urban interface fires that we can bring back to Turner Valley there as well. And I guess the last portion was another hot item up at the AMA Summit this year was the issues associated with post-traumatic stress disorder within our first responders and some of the ways that we can support those people with that. Monitoring and situational awareness. Every day we receive a Provincial Operations Center daily situation report, which I sort of briefly go over. Certainly if there's events, etc. going on in the province, I'll delve into them a little bit more in detail. But they cover large-scale incidents, any states of local emergency that might be occurring, status of weather, on and on it goes. Just to sort of keep up as to what's happening in the province, go through those. Environment Canada weather alerts. I've got a little chart down there. I receive far too many of those. So the numbers on the left are the numbers that I receive. So some months I'm receiving in excess of 160 weather alerts. What I do is monitor the specific area that Turner Valley's in, and then periodically, as the season progresses, I'll look at areas a little bit to the west sometimes. So coming into flood season, precipitation reports are very important. So I'll monitor what's happening over in Kananaskis as well, so that we get a little bit more of a heads up that's going on. From the chart down there, you can see in March we had a lot of snow and actually a few incidents for risk for ice storms, which are quite debilitating to the community. July and August, the usual thunderstorms, hail, tornadoes, and August the same. And if you remember back to last August, we had quite a bit of trouble with air quality, so we were getting a lot of those reports coming in. And then, of course, those lovely winds that we had in December. Oh, sorry, just to go back. I also monitor 911 alerts. We call them rip and runs. So every time the fire department goes out, I receive a notification on my cell phone. In terms of having a quick response to a large-scale incident, being in from the ground with the fire department is a very important thing. Almost every large-scale incident, the fire department will be involved, so if I get toned out when they get the report, I'm better able to maintain that sort of situational awareness. 2018 activations, we had no major activations, only what we call level 4 activations, which are those situations that sort of pique our interest a little bit and require a little bit of research to see if they're going to escalate, etc. So we had some power runoffs, or power outage, spring runoff. We had quite a bit of a melt situation last spring, if you remember back. The Champion Lakes wildfires, so that was the official name given to the incident that happened out in McLean Creek this year. So we sort of kept an eye on that one, gas strike and the sewage release. Big changes for the field of emergency management was the Emergency Management Act. So 2018 brought quite a few changes to that act. And with that act, they also issued for the first time a regulation under the act. So I was involved in a little bit of mayoral briefing so that they could go up and share some of their thoughts and opinions at the AMA meetings, and also participated in a number of stakeholder surveys and engagement sessions. The act received its royal assent on the 21st of December, and the regulation will come in force. It's been issued. Will come in force January 1st of 2020. So some of the changes in the Act, Turner Valley was doing very well in terms of its emergency management plan, its bylaw, etc. But certainly there have been a few minor areas that are going to require some tweaks. So it has triggered a bit of a review of the emergency management bylaw and some minor amendments to the plan going forward through 2019. This year we also completed, we do this just about annually, the Hazard Inventory and Risk Assessment. Short form is HIRA. So what we do for that is we look at the community of Turner Valley and we identify any hazard that might be a factor within the town. Okay, so it could be anything from floods to fires to active shooters at a school, etc., etc. And what we do is we've got a little bit of a complicated system that we go through by which we identify the frequency with which that could occur. We look at the consequences that may occur from that, everything from fatalities to injuries to financial losses, et cetera, et cetera. And we also look at whether or not that hazard is, if the risk is changing. So if the impacts are more likely to occur in the future, or if the probability of it occurring is more likely. Doing a little bit of fancy math, we come up with a risk assessment number and essentially rate all of the hazards within the community on a scale. It gives us a little bit of idea of which ones are the ones that we need to really look at in terms of planning, or to determine whether or not we've planned adequately for them. So, got input when we were doing that, got input from the Turner Valley Emergency Management Agency members, so that's RCMP, peace officers, fire department, myself, and presented to the results of that to the Emergency Management Committee early in July of 2019. In terms of the municipal emergency plan, related plans and programs, no real changes to the emergency plan this year. A lot of that was waiting for the minor changes that would occur through 2019 to the Act and the regulation. We have had annual updates to the emergency response plans for all of the oil and gas industry participants working within the local area. We have copies of those in our offices. Also been working on supplemental emergency response plans for various projects. So when the oil and gas industry does do things like well abandonments or compressor station upgrades, pipeline abandonments, those sorts of things, they are required to do an emergency response plan specific to that project, and as Turner Valley Emergency and Disaster Management collaborates in that process. AHS EMS has also done quite a major update to their mass casualty incident response plan, which was released this year as well. Predominantly the changes there is they're working much more within the incident command system, which is the system that Turner Valley's been using for the last 10 years, so it works very, very well for us. Other projects that have been worked on this year, really working to develop and strengthen our incident management team. These are the people that work in the Emergency Operations Center during an incident to coordinate the response. To this end, I've created job descriptions and job aids for the 9 key positions within the ICS structure, not all of them. And these job descriptions will be quite useful in terms of training, but also will serve as a useful reference during an event to help trigger some memories of the sorts of things that they should be thinking of and doing. Completed a incident management team orientation for our safety officer and our logistics sections chief, and we've also secured personnel for planning section chief and logistics section chief within the EOC, so that's wonderful. Another project that we've been working on is the wildland urban interface. This is an issue that's becoming increasingly on the minds of Albertans. We've had a lot of incidents, and they seem to be escalating in nature, and seem to be occurring with more frequency. So it's an area that we've been looking at for the town of Turner Valley specifically. Some of the things that we've done with regards to this is completed a fuel mapping of the town, so looking at the areas that have fine fuels, looking at the areas that have what we call populous trees or C2 type fuels, and the areas where the coniferous trees are, and sort of mapping them out throughout the town so that we can start to get an idea of where the weak points are, how fire would spread throughout our community, etc. Worked with Alberta Agriculture and Forestry. This is mainly fell in the fire department's lap to develop a fire control agreement and a mutual aid fire control plan. So both of these documents are essentially about sharing resources and training amongst us and the wildland fire guys. What generally happens is the wildland fire people will handle the wildland frontline forest fire area. But what they've done, is, because it's really not their expertise, is they've passed off structural protection to the municipalities. So working through that. The signing of those 2 documents led to a little bit more training for us as well. So we put all of our firefighters through a basic wildland fire program. A lot of this training we had done before, but these documents triggered the need for specific accreditation, so it resulted in a little bit of further training for us. We did train a number of our firefighters to the 1051 level, which is the Wildland Firefighter Professional Qualifications under the NFPA and Pro Board, and also an S115 Structural Protection Workshop, which is the process of triaging those structures which are going to be resistant or defensible in a wildland fire situation, and those that may not be so much, but also the ability to deploy sprinkler protection systems in order to protect those structures and establish perimeters. Also done a little bit of work on developing a Type 3 structural protection unit, which will be a sprinkler trailer, likely in our town by the end of the year, for the purposes of battling these wildland urban interface fires. Quite a bit of work on our RAST plans. This is Rapid Assessment and Structural Triage. So this rapid damage assessment takes place in the first few hours of an incident. And essentially it focuses on looking at what are the impacts of an incident on our community. What is the status of our critical infrastructure, the power, the transportation corridors, those sorts of things. What is the status of our facilities and service, fire department, police, EOC, public works, etc. But also looking at the status of damage to homes, businesses, and other important built infrastructure within our town. Sort of reverse engineering this. So started looking at best practices, what other communities are doing, that sort of thing. Managed to develop some rapid assessment team kits and documentation postings to be put on buildings, that sort of thing, and a process for gathering all this stuff together. And the only item that remains is putting it together into the formal written plan to organize it for inclusion in the emergency plan. So RAST is pretty important for gaining situational awareness that we can bring back into the EOC. You need to know what's going on out there so that you can adequately plan for the response, but also for planning for safe re-entry back into the community, and also for recovery efforts down the road. Public alerting and mass notification systems. Within Turner Valley, we use two systems, the Alberta Emergency Alert and also the Turner Valley Alert system, which is part of the Safe Community Program. So Alberta Emergency Alert, currently we have 4 personnel within our municipality that are trained to issue alerts. Our public information officer, myself, and 2 members for the fire department are the alerters. The RCMP also have some as well, but more for the Amber Alert system. The biggest change that's occurred with Alberta Emergency Alert this year is this idea of wireless public alerting, and I think everybody here has experienced, I hope, some of those tests that went on throughout last summer. So one of the challenges with the Alberta Emergency Alert system is it interrupted radio and television broadcasting to issue critical alerts, and unfortunately in this day and age those aren't technologies that are widely used. We tend to be streaming media, using satellite TV, not always listening to radio, and sometimes if we are, it's Spotify. So the ability to be able to force those critical alerts out to cell phones in the public has gone a long way to enhancing the ability to issue alerts and instructions to the public. Within the Safe Communities Alert Network, system is up and running well. We do quarterly tests on that, and the numbers are coming back very, very well. Currently, we issue what we call critical alerts, which are the life and death, information alerts, which are those sorts of important messages that I don't really want to wake you up in the middle of the night for. We also have people sign up for volunteer requests. So currently we have 756 subscribers to the critical alerts, which I think is fairly good. 620 to just the information. And we have 658 people that are willing to accept requests should we need volunteers to sandbag or clear streets, that sort of thing, which I think is very good. And the last item I wish to talk about is the South Central Mutual Aid Agreement. So this was an agreement that was signed probably, well, we've been working on it for about 4 years. And we had an update to that agreement that went through this year. We have had all 26 communities sign on and have the finalized copy back. So this mutual aid agreement is essentially an agreement designed for large-scale incidents or disasters in which these 26 communities that are starred up on the map are willing to share their resources with each other. So it essentially details the process by which we will request those information or those resources, and also seek compensation for those resources as well. So it's a very good comprehensive agreement. So this will allow us to access everything from firefighters to water treatment personnel to finance people to safety codes officers, generators, etc. And gone a long way to sort of increasing the amount of resiliency that we can have during these disasters.
Fantastic. Any questions for Mr. Rooke? Can't get you out of the seat there.
Excellent presentation, may I say.
I'll give you a motion to accept his information, Gerry, but I have no comments other than thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's so great to have you in the chair of this. I know how passionate you are about emergency management and the fantastic job you did during the flood. So, on behalf of council, thank you very much for being part of the team.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
And with that, we have a motion from Councillor Holladay, or Hamilton, sorry, to accept presentation for information. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimously carried. Okay. Administrative inquiries / responses, sorry. Responses, we have none. So moving on to 11 administrative inquiries. I believe we have 2. Mr. Sharp, would you like to identify those?
Excuse me, I'll turn it back to the mayor's chair. We had inquiries submitted from Councillor Holladay and Councillor Raab.
Councillor Holladay, would you like to lead us off?
I submitted 2 administrative inquiries. The first one was to provide a summary of our committees and how we report our minutes back to our residents, whether it's links on the website or included in our agenda packages, etc. Also looked for some clarity on council versus administration's role in communicating and reporting on committee decisions. Are the committee reports done in the past by our council best practice, and does administration have any other suggestions to better facilitate the flow of information? As you know, we've sometimes been doing committee reports off and on, but it wasn't regularly scheduled and hasn't been done for some time, so this is really just to follow up on that, on what we should be doing going forward. And the second question I had was what bylaws, policies, and procedures are on the list to be reviewed in 2019?
Excellent. Mr. Raab, would...
Through the mayor?
Oh, yep,
Through the mayor,
sorry,
just
go ahead,
as a
Mr. Sharp.
response to Councillor Holladay, there's a 4-part answer to Councillor Holladay's first question around committees. I'll need a little bit more time to prepare that, and I'll return at the next council meeting with that. With respect to the bylaws, policies, and procedures on the list to be reviewed, we certainly are compiling that list either out of necessity or periodic review. It can be as simple as a change to the Municipal Government Act that would trigger something like that, or direction from council and or administration recommendation. I'll bring back our best list for council at the next meeting as to what we foresee in 2019 as either requiring review and or why that might be.
Thank you. Mr. Raab.
Thank you, Mayor Green. I just have one question, and that is, some time ago, council directed administration to do a review of our utility costs, etc. And I don't think it was expected now. I think there is a little bit, it's down the road. But I just want to know how that's progressing and when we could expect that report.
Through Mayor Crane, as council will recall, Deputy Mayor Waring had put forward a notice of motion which was subsequently passed by council to undertake a utility rate review for water, sewer, and potentially stormwater in preparation for the 2020 budget period. So our intention is to have that prepared for that process, likely in the late summer, early fall, so that information's ready for the budget process. The amount of money required for that review was set aside in the 2019 budget, and of course, as you know, we're coming upon approval of that, in which case that would trigger the process.
Thank you. Is that good, Mr. Raab?
That's a gotcha, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds a lot like the email I sent you.
Excellent. All right, that is it for administrative inquiries. And just so we're clear again, noon of the day of the meeting is when we are to have our questions in. So 2 weeks from now, if you have a question, get it in by noon and we'll have an answer for that night. All right, number 12, bylaws and policies. Oh, yes, I think we will accept for information. Councillor Waring says he'll accept for information. Any comments?
Not needed.
No, there's none? You sure?
Yeah,
All right, we're good. Then moving on.
it was a clear.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. 12.1 bylaws policies, no items. 12.2 2019 operating budget approval. Mr. Sharp, lead us away.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. As Ms. Middleton's making her way to the front, just a bit of a preamble for you. As you're well aware, on December 12th, administration brought forward proposed budget, which showed a deficit of $199,815. Council directed administration to go back and find that amount of money in cost savings possibilities. Administration proceeded, and we've had a series of engagements along the way leading up to this evening, not the least of which was to our last council meeting where council approved the cost savings initiatives it was prepared to implement. Tonight before you is the final 2019 operating budget for approval, and I will turn it over to Ms. Middleton for a short presentation to bring it back on track, and we'll turn it back to the mayor's chair.
Thank you. Ms. Middleton?
So thank you through the mayor. So this evening, I think we're just gonna do a bit of a recap over what's been happening over the course of the last 5 months. Yes, 5 months. So I'm just gonna go through some information that is all contained within the package, so there's no new information that's coming out in the few slides that I have.
I thought you had some music gonna chime in there just now.
So the discussion items that I'm gonna go through this evening is going to be the 2019 operating budget and just some key milestones, and Mr. Sharp has already kind of alluded to some of those items already. We're gonna go through the operating budget with the cost saving initiatives that have been inserted into it, and then we will proceed with the final approval of the 2019 operating budget. So, as we discussed earlier, the timeline of key events. So the 2019 budget process really began in October, so that's nearly 5 months ago. And we are here today with hopefully the milestone of presenting the final budget for approval. Through the process, we held 5 engagement sessions, and we had 3 in November and we had 2 in December. And within that time frame, we had a lot of discussion and dialogue with respect to the capital and operating budgets. November 28th, we passed the capital budget to phase 1 for $417,000, and then we'll be proceeding this spring with phase 2 of that capital budget process. On December 12th, we brought the operating budget back for approval with a $199,000 deficit, and it was not approved. So through that, council requested administration to go back and find the $199,000 in savings, and so today we are here and we have those savings included in the operating budget. So through the January and certainly up until to the present time, we collaborated and we went back, we obtained those savings. We presented on February 19th cost savings of just over $209,000, and council provided us with what they would like to see, which were cost savings of $194,600. Keeping in mind this had no impact on service levels or delivery of services. So the 2019 operating budget, as of what we see today, we have a amount of 0.
Bottom line, the budget is just over $5.7 million. And we have included the cost saving column in the middle, which identifies which departments the cost savings impacted. And that's just in the middle there. So we had administration had $22,000 of cost savings that were incorporated into their budget. And this largely included some of the photocopying, the online billing, and those types of items that are really internal within our organization. Common services, and this is where we have the change in the position where we move to more of a project management role, which is more, which has the capabilities of being capital. And so that has $104,000 in it, as well as some adjustments to the OH&S portfolio. So we have savings there of another $15,000. Under the FCSS and economic development, they have some decreases in their telephone charges, and this is part of the $9,500 of TELUS that we are going to be able to recognize through the renegotiation of our contract. And Parks has some savings which represent the adjustment to the Parks position and some changes with our how we contract out our mats and our uniforms. As well, the swimming pool has some decreases as well in our phone charges, and the municipal campground moving forward with an online reservation system. So with that, we came through with $194,600, but in order to balance, we had to place $5,215 into the bottom general taxes and grants in order to have a zero-based budget. As well, we've presented for information only 2020, 2021, and 2022. And within these budgets, there is some items that are captured that are going to be one-time, projects that are going on within departments. And if there isn't, there is instances where we've applied just an inflationary number of 3% in order to provide a baseline moving forward. The next couple of slides just provide a bit of a breakdown as far as the various categories. So revenue, we really only touched one particular category, and that's other revenues, and that's where the $5,215 is residing. And that brings us into the $5.786 million. And under the expense category, there's a number of categories that have been impacted. This includes wages and benefits, phones, IT support, and contracted services. And so this also brings us into $5.786 million and brings us to a net bottom line of $0. So in summary, this was definitely a collaborative effort between council and administration. Although the time period was condensed, and even though it did last 5 months, we accomplished an incredible amount. We had positive engagement, and we were able to go out into the community and obtain public participation. In closing, I just wanted to make note that we have two items that came through requests that are not included in this budget, and that is the PTA request and the Boys and Girls Club. So next steps. Approval of the 2019 operating budget, and once we obtain this, we will move forward quite quickly with the capital plan part 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. Quick question for you, just an easy low-hanging fruit. The PTA request and the Boys and Girls Club request. Would we be looking at that in part 2 of the capital budget, Mr. Sharp?
Through the mayor's chair, those items were raised a couple of times during the process. They're operating grants, they would be considered operating grants, so they wouldn't go through the capital, process. But there's still a mechanism to have council discuss and potentially approve those if they so choose through, transfer from reserves, at another time. For the purposes of today, we've excluded them from, the operating budget plan.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Mr. Waring?
Yeah, can we assume therefore from this proposal that the rates for utilities are going to remain the same as in 2018?
Through the mayor to Councillor Waring, that is correct. We won't make any changes to utility rates until we have the opportunity to do the proper analysis on it, which will come this summer.
Thank you.
Councillor Hampton?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I was wondering if we could get a copy of the slides that you showed in today's meeting. They're different than the slides that are in our package for this evening. And I had another follow-up question to the PTA and the Boys and Girls Club, just so those things don't get missed. Can we maybe make a motion on those for them to come back to council so we can get back to these organizations with a decision? I know that they're not going to have anything to do with this budget, but if it is something we are gonna consider from a transfer from reserves, I think that we should address it and not let it fall off the radar.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. After we do the budget approval / motion, then maybe we'll look at that as a secondary motion. Councillor Hamilton, or Holladay, gee.
I have that problem
Right?
all the time.
I know, 2 H's.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate the work that's gone into this budget, and I just want to make sure I'm getting lots of questions from residents on the 100,000, the project management position, and I want to make sure that I'm explaining it right to people. So I'll explain it how I understand it. So we've reduced salaries and wages by the 104,000, but that position is now going to be transferred over as a capital expense in capital projects. But we don't expect our capital budget to go up because of it, because that project manager position is going to do some of the things that we previously paid MPE and other people to do. So we're saving on our operating budget, but we're not going to see any increases in our capital spending because they're taking over, right, outside contracted service work. That's, do I have that right?
So through the mayor, you are correct. So the expectation is that a lot of that work that's being done, prepared by our third-party engineering firm, will be taken over by an in-house individual.
I'll give you the motion.
Yep.
Okay, I'd like to motion that council approve the 2019 operating budget plan in the amount of $5,786,971 and accept the 2020 to 2022 forecast as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Holladay. Any further discussion on that motion? Councillor Raab? Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Waring?
Deputy Mayor Waring to you.
Deputy Mayor Waring to me, that's correct. Deputy Mayor Waring.
Oh, I'm
I
good.
have to put your symbol up here. Councillor Holladay.
Happy, thank you.
All right, with that, all in favor? That is unanimous. Great job. Very happy with the work that's been done.
Thank you.
Okay, where am I?
No, there's no motion.
Can I make a secondary motion?
You can. Councillor Hamilton?
I'd like to make a motion that we bring back, or that administration bring back to council the PTA and Boys and Girls request for consideration by council from a transfer from reserves. When would be a fair time for that to come back?
Just quarter two.
Okay, quarter two. Is that okay?
I think so. Any discussion on that motion? Everyone's clear? Mr. Sharp, good? Alright, all in favor? And that is also carried unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on. 12.2 is out and done. 12.3, Community Support Fund Request from Friends of Quest Education Foundation. You have your information package in front of you. I will hand it off to, you're gonna go straight to it? I'm just gonna-
No.
You can put the motion out there, I'm good with that. And then we can let them just describe it.
I think you have to describe it first.
Alright, go ahead, Mr. Sharp.
Thank you. Through the mayor, before you is a request for funding from the Quest program, which is a year-long outdoor education and environmental program through the Oil Fields High School. This year there's 12 students, and it consists of classroom instruction and a field trip excursion. The students are responsible for covering the majority of their costs and must assist with fundraising the balance. If approved, the grant will be used for offsetting the cost of hosting fundraising events, including the annual dinner and auction scheduled on March 30th. You may recall we've had some discussions around the use of community support grant funds for the purposes of fundraising. For a couple of reasons, we are recommending that the grant request be approved. The first reason is this group has been approved in the past and we've set precedent. And secondly, the policy is under review and we don't have any further framework with which to adjudicate this request. Therefore, staff's recommending approval.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Waring?
Motion that council approve the Friends of Quest Education Foundation Community Support Fund grant request in the amount of $500.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waring. Any discussion on this request? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Unanimous again. Thank you. Alright, that was next, we have 12.4 designated officer bylaw 19-1090. Mr. Sharp, you can take this one away.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. Excuse me. This is a bylaw review which was prompted by changes to the Municipal Government Act last year. And going through the designated officer bylaw, we noticed a number of changes that we wanted to make. This is an administrative bylaw and gives the designated officer position certain functions and authorities within our organization. Ultimately, the chief administrative officer has the ultimate administrative authority to carry out the business of the municipality. But for efficiencies and ease of implementation and smooth transition, smooth service, all municipalities delegate some of those authorities to certain positions. So before you is a request to approve some amendments to the designated officer bylaw 19-1090. The amendments were too great, so this is a new bylaw. This is a new bylaw that we're putting forward as opposed to simply amending the old one. As I said, these requirements are typically administrative in nature. And so we've outlined the variety of changes to designated authorities in 2 copies of this bylaw. The first one you'll see the highlighted red line version and a clean copy for approval. We're requesting that council provide first, second, consider third reading, and provide third and final reading to this bylaw, considering there's very little debate around this one and the fact that it's purely an administrative bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Can I get a motion from council to start discussion?
I'll give you a motion that council,
Get your,
Sure.
give your mic, there, it's right there. There you go, no, it's all good.
I'll give you the motion that council approve first reading of bylaw 19-1090.
No.
Oh.
Thank you.
You've got to do the
Oh.
whole amendment.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is option 1.
What's
No, it's
one?
option 2 they want.
Or option, yeah, that's what they want, but
Or are we gonna do it all in one?
Yeah, because it's only administration. Unless you don't want to.
Oh, okay, I just didn't think that we were doing that.
That was the request.
Okay, I'll give you the motion that council provide first, second reading, hear third reading, and provide third and final reading to bylaw 19-1090 designated officer.
Yeah, I understand. You were correct the first time, you're going with the first reading.
That's what I was going to do. Okay.
Yeah, and if we wanna proceed, we would give second. It's all a single that builds up to it. So,
Should
I'll
I go
have your,
back to my first one? Okay.
read your first one.
Okay,
Did I bugger up again?
option one, that council provide first reading to bylaw 19-1090 designated officer and direct administration to bring the bylaw back.
No.
No.
See?
just stop.
No.
Provide first reading.
First reading, okay,
Stop.
Yeah,
period,
full stop.
okay,
Full stop.
See, I'm
that
not
wasn't
right.
confusing.
I agree. It can be.
This one says
Okay, so we have a motion for first reading of bylaw 19-1090, the designated officers bylaw. Discussion. Councillor Raab.
Yes, I read this over a couple of times and I don't see anything wrong with it, and that's kinda scary. That said, it's too perfect, is what, no. Just, what I'm saying is, I always like sober second thoughts, so I'd certainly be in favor of going 1 and 2, but maybe, and personally, I didn't see, it looks good, and I understand it's not really, it's an administrative bylaw, it doesn't really have any effect, I don't believe, on any of us up here, so I really am not opposed to the third reading, but I wonder if it's not wise just to go 1 and 2, and then perhaps the next meeting have third. That's just my idea, not sure it's a good one.
Any further discussion?
Yeah,
Councillor Waring.
yeah, I'm happy with third reading tonight because it purely is an administration thing, and the sooner we get it put to bed, the sooner they get on with it. The CAO.
Through the mayor,
No, there you go. I was
through the
wondering.
mayor, we're just at first reading. The
Right.
discussion you're having would be during consideration of third
Right.
reading. So for these purposes, we just need a vote on
Sure.
first reading.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, is everyone comfortable with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, alright, so all in favor of first reading? Oh, no,
I have a
go ahead.
question.
Oh, yeah, no, you've got a question, you go ahead.
I just wanna clarify for the public, we're calling this administrative, so this is no new positions being created in the organization, we're just designating who has what job within the organization. So that's why we're calling it administrative only, cause it's, I just wanna clarify that for everyone.
Absolutely. Alright. All in favor of giving designated officer bylaw 19-1090 first reading? Unanimous. Excellent, thank you. Councillor Raab.
Mayor Crane, I'd be pleased to make a motion to provide this bylaw with its second reading. That is 19-1090.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm gonna ask again. All in favor of giving second reading? Thank you. Now we would need a motion to hear third reading from here in. So if someone wants to make that motion, it has to be unanimous, just like every other vote tonight, in order to go to third. Just laying it out there.
I can give you that.
Councillor Waring? Deputy Mayor Waring?
I'll resign. The council could hear the third reading of the bylaw 19-1090 designated officer.
And now, Mr. Raab, you can comment.
Well, I think I already have kind of prematurely, but, I really don't see anything wrong with it, and it is, as Councillor Holladay said, it's administrative bylaw, all it does is just tidy up from the MGA, the new rules of the MGA. I think that's correct, am I right? So I can go with the flow here.
Mr. Holladay?
I have no problems with this bylaw, but I I don't like the precedence of passing 3 things in one night, so it puts me in a quandary.
It's true. They're only making work, it's not necessary.
Yeah, so, I mean, normally, I just have to express that, and I'll leave that, if anyone else would like to comment on that, that would be great.
This is where I'm unclear whether I can actually comment or not as mayor.
You have to put the gravel away.
So, just in response to couple of councillors' questions around hearing third reading, I fully understand that, and we rarely come to you with 1, 2, 3, if you will, to use the slang term. This is such a routine change, that's why we're doing it. If there was any bylaw of any sort of public implication, or any other financial substance, anything like that, we understand the way councillor likes to operate. We table it, or excuse me, we present it usually with first reading, we talk about some other things, and we go that route. This one is simply an administrative bylaw, hence the reason we're proposing we give all 3 readings this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Raab? Councillor Raab, sorry.
I guess the big advantage of voting in favor of third reading and moving on is that it's expedites things from a min point of view, and you can move on and worry about other jobs. So I don't see, like, I have no issues with it. I read it twice to make sure that I didn't miss anything, and it looked good. I mean, I don't understand all the implications, but I think I do. It's all good to me, so.
I guess I'll just ask what Councillor Holladay asked previously. To be clear, there's no budget implications, there's no new positions, this is purely designations of duties on your side, nothing else.
That is correct.
Okay, with that, any other further comments from council, and I'm gonna call the question. Okay, all in favor of giving hearing third reading? Okay, we're past that one, and can I get a motion for third and final reading? Councillor Hamilton.
I'll give you the motion, that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 19-1090, designated officer.
All right, I think we've all said our piece, but I'm gonna ask again. Any further comments from council regarding this designated officer bylaw 1910-90? All in favor of proceeding with third and final? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. As much as I agree sometimes we can't set precedents on going too fast and too forward, I'll agree with Councillor Raab, this has been straightforward. There. 19-13-13, we're going with 13 here. Old business, 13.1, no items. New business, 14.1, no items. 15, general correspondence. Good news story, MSI Memorandum of Agreement from Municipal Affairs. Mr. Sharp, would you like to read that letter out loud, or just give us a Coles Note version of the good stuff?
I appreciate you letting me off the hook there. To summarize, the letter from Minister Anderson, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, has notified our municipality and others that the Municipal Sustainability Initiative funding that was questionable beyond the end of March 2019 has been extended for 3 years under the same terms and conditions. We will then be entering into a funding agreement with the province that will allow us to receive a level of funding until March 31st, 2022, at which time it appears there will be a new formula and potentially a new program developed.
Excellent, thank you very much. And we have, I don't know if we need to read this out or not. It is a letter we sent out in December regarding the West End Regional Sewage Commission to Alberta Infrastructure.
Gotta accept the other one for information.
We're gonna accept them both at the same time under general correspondence. So would you like to speak to the letter we received from Infrastructure Alberta? or Government of Canada.
Sure, through the mayor. Again, a very straightforward letter from the federal government. This council sent a letter of concern, I guess you could say, to the federal government with a copy to the province, in partnership with the town of Black Diamond in support of the West End Regional Sewage Services Commission, to express the urgency with which we require some assistance to fund the repairs that are required long-term to the lagoon and other infrastructure. The letter simply says, thank you, we've received it. Please contact the Minister of Transportation who oversees this program and ask them about the funding that's available. So they've acknowledged receipt of the letter and put it back on the province.
Surprise. Okay, thank you very much. Can I get a motion to accept general correspondence, those two letters? Councillor Raab is giving the motion to accept general correspondence. Any questions? All in favor? Excellent, thank you, that's unanimous. Correspondence action required, we have no items. Committee board correspondence and minutes. We have 17.1, Turner Valley FCSS meeting minutes. There's a good 3 pages there. Why don't we open up with that one? Do we have any questions from council regarding the FCSS meeting minutes? Councillor Holladay?
Yeah, I believe this is a board that Councillor Hamilton sits on, so this, I guess this question would be more for her. I'm just wondering if, January seemed to be the big meeting where all of the grant money was given away. And I'm just wondering if you had more applicants, asking for more money than you were able to give out, kind of how much that way. And I also was wondering about, if when people apply for the FCSS grant, do they, show information as to how many Turner Valley residents are served, or is it just a general? Because some of these organizations are foothills area, not specific to Turner Valley. So if you could walk us through the funding, what you guys did in January, that would be great.
Councillor Hamilton?
Okay, so I think I'm gonna answer your second question first. So we do get reports on how many residents in Turner Valley utilize the program by the applicant. So that's included in their application, and then it's also included in their yearly report. So I think they probably use previous year's numbers or estimates for their application, and then they do provide actuals at the end of the year. So while some of the organizations may not be in Turner Valley, they are definitely utilized by Turner Valley residents. And when we're looking at applications, the amount of residents that use the program, that's kind of one of the factors that helps us decide how much money to give to those organizations. So where we've got lots of usership, we would be more willing to allocate funds. So in January, we had all applications in. Manek compiles them. She brings them to us in a very organized way. It's very clear on where the application is coming from, what the funding request is, who's going to benefit from the service, the amount being requested, the amount that was requested and approved in previous years, the amount being requested of Black Diamond and Okotoks and also Foothills. So we do see all of the possible funding sources through FCSS for each application, and we can weigh it against what we did in previous years as well. Generally, we were able to provide funds to all applicants with the exception of 3 that didn't qualify. So there's pretty stringent rules on who can apply for the grant funding and who can't, and there was 3 applications that didn't fit the criteria. The main reason they didn't fit the criteria is because they already received government grant funding through a different source. So FCSS does not, you can't get duplicate funding. So if there's already a government agency that's providing funding for your program, you can't also piggyback on FCSS funding. So with that exception, there was 3 of them this year that didn't meet that criteria, so they didn't get any of the requested funding. But other than that, we were able to give to all applicants, but also not in full amounts. So they all received some funding, maybe not all of it, but, we always have a little bit of a shortfall as well. So the FCSS program is 80% provincial funding and 20% municipal funding. So it's like a matching grant. We need to use municipal dollars to fund 20% of the program. So the town of Turner Valley, we fund programs that FCSS won't. So we have a taxi subsidy program for people in our town that maybe can't get to a doctor's appointment or can't get to the pharmacy. They can call the taxi and it's subsidized, so a portion of that is covered by the town's FCSS grant funding. There's also cleaning, like house cleaning services, and some other things that don't necessarily fall into the provincial funding that the municipal funding covers. So because we do fund those other programs, we don't have enough money to do 100% of the applicants, but we do as best we can. I think everybody got a fair amount this year, and all of the applications that did receive funds definitely have Turner Valley residents that are utilizing them, whether they are headquartered here or not. I think I answered that.
Beautifully.
Okay.
Beautifully.
I would say that was one of the best explanations ever.
Thanks.
So thank you very much for that detailed report. That's okay, Deputy Waring, you're second. All right, so that's FCSS. Anyone else have any questions on the FCSS minutes? And then we're just gonna jump right onto the library, and then we'll adopt both, just like we did previously. So Sheep River Library minutes. Lana attended that one in my absence. Lana, just straightforward, anything that jumps out at you?
No, I don't think so. That was a while ago.
Yeah.
I will give you the motion to accept both as information.
All right, Councillor Hamilton has a motion to accept both committee board correspondence minutes as information. Any further questions? All in favor? Unanimously carried. Thank you. And that concludes the first meeting where I'm chair. Okay, thank you very much for coming out, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Oh, Mr. Todd.
Not so fast, Mayor Crane.
Oh.
We just need a short
Yes, that's
5-minute
right.
recess before we go into close.
Yes, can I get a small recess, bathroom break, before we go to close meeting?
Sure.
Councillor Raab. If we could have the room cleared by the time we are finished that 5 minutes, that would be great. We'd like to get home tonight, so we don't want to be here all night either. Thank you very much for coming again. Out to camera. All good. All good. Waring says out of camera. Whispered it right here.
At 8:16.
Is there anything else?
Just a motion, not to,
Out
to
at
direct me to enter into
7, 6, 8, 7.
Waring's taking us out, right?
Yep.
Waring's taking us out.
I've asked Gerry to come up with some potential wording on a motion.
Mm-hmm. All in favor to come out? Good.
I'm against.
First
We all
against.
voted.
Wording, what do you got?
So the one possible set of wording here for the recommendation would be the council direct the CEO to execute the settlement agreement between Carolina Homes and the town of Turner Valley for Seclusion Valley Phase 1 deficiencies.
I like it.
Yep.
I could even make that, but somebody else could.
Can you read
Do you want
that?
3 readings?
No, not in one night,
Not
John.
one night, no, I can't do that. I'll make that motion that Gerry just,
You gonna do it?
Gary's motion is Gary's motion.
There you go. It's a Gerry motion,
Pete.
so.
You don't want me to read it back?
Jerry Gary.
Yeah, if you wanna read it to
You
Heather.
read it to Heather,
and
though.
to
I
us.
may have to pass it off, there's a lot here for you.
Sure.
The council direct the CEO to execute the settlement agreement between Carolina Homes, Inc. and town of Turner Valley for Seclusion Valley Phase 1 deficiencies.
That's covered it, huh?
Is that first reading?
Yeah, anybody have any questions on Mr. Councillor Raab's motion?
Good job wording it.
I think you did a
I
great
like
job
it.
wording
I
it.
like it
I
too.
like your detail in there. You're like, hey, you narrowed down on the wording.
Okay,
Yeah.
remember you're still being recorded.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're back in open.
In that case, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Can I ask just an information question?
Yeah, I think we're.
You've been
we're good to
recorded.
go. Sure. Yeah, don't make it,
We are in open we are still in open
Yeah.
council. Just so you know.
It's just a question about landscaping.
Go
yeah,
ahead.
sure.
Are we landscaping around the lift station, like on the outside of that fence? Is there gonna be like columnar aspens or something?
The,
Which
Or, you know,
fence are we
Tony
talking?
Asters.
Which fence are we talking about?
On the outside of the lift station in Seclusion Valley.
Oh, okay.
so the answer to that question is we have some of the money set aside here, will go towards landscaping. The budget for the lift station itself didn't include landscaping per se, it included ground cover and what have you. But we do have, we are in discussions with the landowner immediately to the east. And if there's an opportunity to assist her with some landscaping for screening, we'll see what we can do for her. Right now, she also has some trees that are sitting in the right of way she has to remove anyway, because she put them in the wrong location. But we were looking at if we can to try to accommodate putting some columns, for example, between the lift station and the fencing in her property. But on the west side and the north and south side, no, it's more landscaping than anything. We still need to have vehicular traffic to get in and out of there down into the storm pond. So
I was just
screening wise,
thinking
it's just
for
the
that rear
fencing.
property, like just walking by it, I was thinking it would probably be nice for her to have something
one
other
who's
than the
on the-
fence to look at,
To
right?
the east of the lift station.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the resident or the owners we're talking with, on having them remove their other trees, but also what we can do with them on possibly landscaping in their yard. We don't have the ability to put it in the fenced area,
Yeah.
it's functioning the way it needs to, we can't landscape inside. But, we'll be approaching her and we haven't yet, so just please
Is there
don't.
public property between the fence and her property, or is it all?
It's basically lift station fencing and then her property. And so she has some older dead trees and maybe we can assist with some columns to help screen a bit. And we'll be changing out the screening color too. There's been some concern with the color.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Malenka, for giving us the update.
And if there's no
We're all
further
good, and
business-
if there's no further business, I'm
That's
going
all
to
for
call this meeting adjourned.